Untitled on the beat.
What's good, everyone? It's Nati with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMVSportsZone. And as always, as we have every single week, we have a fantasy preview with the guy, the man, the myth, the legend, Noah. AI. And Noah, I know we usually do this towards the end of the video, but do you want to plug your fantasy platform?
Yeah, no, again, thanks for having me on, Nati. Just what he's talking about is Sport AI, where through a mobile platform that's integrated with some artificial intelligence, it helps anyone understand fantasy sports analytics as well as optimizing your lineup with the click of a button. So we're getting all these sleepers with the power of our own back end, and we've got a lot of good feedback from our week so far. So excited to recap.
Sure.
Talk about more.
Yeah, for sure. And unlike me, who's just an ordinary fantasy fan who plays all the time and knows a little bit about fantasy football and stuff, like Noah actually has a whole platform dedicated to it. So he is the expert. And as always, it's great to have Noah on the channel and on these weekly preview videos. But having said all that, let's get started. As we usually do every single week, let's recap our picks from last week. And usually we just do one pick that we got right and one pick that we got wrong. So, but if you don't have any picks that you got wrong, Noah, give me two picks that you got right.
Yeah, I think week 3. Well, the previous week we did have a couple missed shots, but this week was perfect. So, as we mentioned in last week's episode, we're talking about how Mark Andrews would be a huge sleeper at the tight end position. We also talk about Joe Mixon being the #1 sleeper as well. And lo and behold, this past weekend, Mixon was the #1 scoring running back, and then Mark Andrews was the #1 scoring tight end in fantasy. So, pretty good return, and we're excited for both those wins. Definitely a trend that we want to keep to track, and excited for this week's sleepers.
Yeah, for sure. Again, we talked about this off camera, but those picks were really, really solid. Joe Mixon, I know a lot of people were down on, but Sport AI predicted that we'd have a solid outing, and he went off last week, so great pick there. I also, this is not a familiar occurrence for me, but I also didn't really get any picks wrong for fantasy last week. Which is crazy. I know I predicted Dalvin Cook to be the fantasy MVP, and he wasn't the fantasy MVP, but technically wasn't a too far off pick. He's got 20 half PPR points. So
yeah, it's pretty solid. It's a pretty solid evening for Cook, but I think it just got overshadowed by Mixon and some of the other big performances that weekend. For
sure. But I'll just go with two picks that got right. Hunter Henry, the Los Angeles Chargers, as a fantasy dud last weekend. As we all saw, Henry was not great whatsoever in last Sunday's matchup, and he only, I believe, corralled 2 catches on only 3 targets for 39 yards and no touchdowns. And then this was despite Herbert being a much better option at quarterback, in my opinion, than Tyrod Taylor, and going over 100 yards passing. But I mean, he did have a bad week last week, but now with Eckler and maybe even Mike Williams being out next week, maybe he might rebound. I don't really know. I don't expect it, but got a good projection there from last week. And then the pick that I got right from the Buffalo Bills, the running back for the Buffalo Bills, Devin Singletary. I thought he was going to be a fantasy sleeper last weekend, and he didn't have the most eye-popping of games, but got you 16 half PPR points last week, and he's definitely the focal point of the Bills running game, as I predicted, with Zach Moss not being there last weekend. So, definitely a great outing from Singletary, and I think we were both pretty. I mean, Sport AI more so, but we were both pretty spot on for last week, which is always great to see.
Hey, for sure. Whatever expertise we can exchange with one another is fine by me, right? So, yeah, I think it was a good week for both of us.
For sure. And then after getting into that recap from last week, let's preview this week's matchups. First and foremost, Noah, can you give me one fantasy sleeper that will break out week 5?
Yeah, for sure. So over here at Sport AI, we worked with our artificial intelligence and made a couple updates to weigh some different factors, and I think it's paid off these past couple weeks. And I know you guys there and ladies are looking for the next James Robinson. So we want to make sure we want to focus on those waiver wire picks that are going to be true sleepers. So with waivers passing through tomorrow, you should probably check it out soon enough. Our two biggest ones that I think a lot of people aren't going to expect. For tight ends, we got Logan Thomas.
Really?
Yeah, we do. Of the Washington football team.
Okay. Our Washington football team.
He's been increasing his targets, his carries. He's being trusted as a true number one. I know everyone's watching is a DC fan, so that's a good sign to tell, especially with Jordan Reed. Unfortunately, just never worked out with injuries. Logan Thomas, I can see him having a very similar renaissance season as Eric Ebron when he left the Lions.
Wow, okay.
So Logan Thomas is trending upward. He's our number one pick for the tight end sleepers, and he's on tons of people's waivers, so that's not a problem. And then for wide receiver, Zach Pascal, the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, I was thinking about him, yeah.
Yeah, he's another guy that I think he gets lost in the shuffle. I know when it comes to the Colts, they have a lot of bigger names. They have your Phillip Rivers, T.Y. Hilton, the running back situation. So people will often forget about the other weapons in the receiving core. Jack Doyle's underrated, but not a true sleeper. I think he's just an average tight end. But when you come to Zach Pascal, even with T.Y. healthy, Pascal's getting the healthy amount of the receiving shares. He's increasing his movement and his moving up the depth chart in terms of his targets, and he had a great improvement on his score plus, which is a summarization metric that we have. So I think he's weighing in that direction as a big sleeper.
Okay. I would say for the Zach Pascal pick, I would worry a little bit about Mo Ali Cox, I believe is his name, the tight end for the Colts.
Another DMV guy.
Yeah. VCU basketball player, which is crazy. I just found that out last week. I don't know if you knew that.
Definitely heard about the Mo Ali Cox story a couple years ago. Being part of that Southern Virginia area for my education. So we heard it from VCU's got a basketball player that's trying to make the NFL, and it was interesting because very classic to Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, other basketball players transition to tight end with legendary results. I'm not saying that Mo Ali Cox has that potential, but he's growing. He's barely played the games, and he's already becoming the number one tight end threat. With Doyle becoming more and more of a blocker every game.
Yeah.
He's definitely a sleeper too, but I think Pascal can overcome that, especially because the targets are going towards him, to the much detriment of whoever drafted T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think that was a legacy pick. People remember him from 2 years ago. He's not the same player anymore.
Andrew Luck, that's a whole different era for the Colts at this point. No, I like your two picks. And yeah, you couldn't go wrong with either one of those on the waiver wire. For me, I'm gonna go with someone, and I hate to say that this guy is gonna be a sleeper just because I have the starting running back for that team on my roster for one of my leagues, and I drafted him in the early second round. But Chase Edmonds, the running back for the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh yeah, Kenyon Drake is having some trouble right now.
You could say bust at this point, right? In a bust.
Yeah, possibly.
So Edmonds, I mean, you mentioned Drake. The starting running back for the Cardinals. He struggled up the gate this season. He was a top 20 draft pick in fantasy drafts this year, and trust me, I know, I'm well aware of that. So much to the demise of fantasy owners, and Edmonds, while not having like the best of stats, which I know the last couple of weeks, he does seem to be more effective with his touches, and he got a touchdown receiving last week as well, and he's, I think, accumulated a couple touchdowns so far this season. So with Drake regression and Edmonds on the upswing, I don't know. They're playing the lowly Jets this weekend. I mean, that's a bunch of opportunities. Yeah.
It's very similar, I think, to Austin Eckler when he exploded for the fantasy scene, even in 2018. Very similar. You got your big paid running back, Melvin Gordon at the time for the Chargers, and now you got Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
But I think that it will be interesting to see because Kenyon Drake has a lot of metrics for him in terms of rebound. And we saw a couple players break out that were in a rough spot. Mixon especially was really struggling. So, it will be interesting to monitor. It can go either way, I think, right now, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm just worried though. As a Drake owner, I'm worried because last week I think all of us were saying the same thing when he was going to play that rough Carolina Panthers defense, and he was limited to like 36 yards on the ground, something like that. Which is
Yeah,
absurd.
we'll see.
Yeah,
Should be interesting.
for sure. But yeah, those are our sleepers. And moving on, Noah, can you give me 2 great fantasy plays this week?
Yeah, so I think I already listed some sleepers, but a couple players that I think are a little more well known. They may still actually be on the waiver wire. 2 quarterbacks. So we have for the New York Giants, we have Daniel Jones as our biggest sleeper, and he's on quite a few people's. Yeah, the Cowboys defense got a lot of holes. They have also proven they can't stop a lot of dual threat quarterbacks, and Daniel Jones can surprisingly go in that pocket, very Andrew Luck-esque. Not saying he's good as Luck yet, but Andrew Luck can go out of the pocket as a sleeper in terms of speed. So Daniel Jones has that matchup, and then you got Devonta Freeman, who's got now another week under his belt. So everything's trending up for him. Evan Ingram, similarly, has a sleeper, I think, as well. Started being dropped, actually, from a lot of leagues recently, but I think that they can bounce back. I think that the data suggests that a lot of the Giants players will bounce back. Despite what the media says, the media likes to create the joke about the New York teams, but unlike the Jets, the Giants have some fantasy value ahead of them, despite Barkley being out for the season. So. Okay. And then the other player at quarterback, we have Kirk Cousins.
Oh, okay.
So Kirk Cousins, has gotten, I think, an unfair shake of things from the media, and as a result, people see a very negative perception. But in fantasy, in the end of the day, it's about passing yards, passing touchdowns. Yeah. And the Vikings are starting to see a little bit of a hole. They're a little scared right now. Not doing great start to the season. And you see that Dalvin Cook's actually getting hit as a result. So Dalvin Cook expected to be catching more passes. They want Kirk in the pocket more. Justin Jefferson had that big night, earlier in the season because they said Kirk Cousins, it's time to take the belt, the belt and, go gunslinger mode, man. Yeah. And so he's throwing a lot more deep balls. So Kirk Cousins got a great matchup this weekend. Our other fantasy sleeper that's going to surprise some people. So 2 quarterbacks that are definitely there. If you have a quarterback that's in the middle tier, the people that are starting their Carson Wentz's, their Ben Roethlisberger's, I would consider, trying to pick up Daniel Jones if you have some roster space and, even starting him, especially over, I think, guys like Ben Roethlisberger for this week.
Yeah. No, another great 2 selections there. Kirk Cousins, I have a bunch of questions on him as a real-life quarterback, but as a fantasy quarterback, you're absolutely right. He always seems to have those boom games like every single season. So, that's a great pick. And for me, I'm going to go with 2 guys that, I think most people already have on their rosters, but are still great fantasy plays this week regardless. I'm going to go with the guy that I drafted in the first round in one of my leagues, in our league actually, in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back.
Oh, okay.
So CEH, while not having too many boom games yet, has been the most consistent, or one of the most consistent running backs in fantasy. His floor is really, really high in my opinion, and I think he is just waiting for that breakout game. And this week he's playing against that very rough Raiders rush defense. So I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire can be a really, really great play this week. And like I said, everybody has him in their leagues and stuff. He's not a waiver wire pick or anything, but still would be, it would, for Clyde Edwards-Helaire owners, you guys should rest assured that this week will be a great week for him.
For sure.
And then someone that Sport AI was out front on before anybody I know. You mentioned this, I think, in our week 1 fantasy preview video, and now he's a legitimate, bona fide RB1, maybe low-end RB1, high-end RB2, and James Robinson, the running back for the Jaguars. I got him as another great play.
Yeah, sure.
And, he pretty much came out of nowhere. He is an undrafted rookie and didn't get all the hype that Clyde Edwards-Helaire got in the offseason and coming into the regular season, but Robinson's been great this season so far, and he's gone over 100 scrimmage yards in each of the last 3 games and scored 3 touchdowns in that span. So his production is unworldly right now at this point, and He got 74 out of the 88 running back touches in the Jaguars' backfield. Our last couple of games, just absurd. And I mean, he's playing against the Texans defense that we all know is very porous right now. And they're giving up the most rushing yards per game out of any team in the NFL right now. So I expect Robinson to feast, man. And again, kudos to Sport AI for being on top of it. And I know you have him in our league, unfortunately, but
helped out a lot.
Yeah,
for sure. I think it's very interesting in that matchup because David Johnson's on the other end. You know, Jacksonville Jaguars as a team have suddenly collapsed after their win against the Colts. So right now, David Johnson's got a big opportunity against a defense that really struggles against running back. James Robinson's got a good opportunity. If you have the blessing to have both, depending on your roster, definitely James Robinson over David Johnson if you can only pick one. So, for sure, I think it's a good sleeper.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of things, as we do every week, Noah, can you give me 2 disappointing fantasy duds for this week?
Yeah, for sure. We have, I think, one situation that we really need to focus on, and that is the LA Chargers debacle right now, with Austin Eckler officially out for this week. Right now, there's a lot of back and forth against who is going to be the better running back, Josh Kelly or Justin Jackson. Both of them, have come in to build a little bit of hype. They're younger players. It's their big opportunity, similar to how Eckler took that opportunity a couple of years ago. Now it's presented to both backs. However, while Justin Jackson will be a sleeper and outperform his expectations, we see the big fantasy disappointment this week being Josh Kelly of the LA Chargers. He's the guy who's got, for some reason, interestingly enough, the bigger name, despite Justin Jackson having a little bit more of a proven track record. You remember last year, as an RB3 when Gordon went down and Eckler taking over a majority of the carries, he was very efficient on the ground. And his score plus is through the roof right now. So he was almost the official sleeper pick for this week, but he'll get an honorable mention. Because on the flip side, Justin Jackson will be good. But Josh Kelly is more of a power back. They need someone now in their new offense to be more spread heavy, and Josh Kelly's carries haven't really indicated much except for game 2. So I think he's the big disappointment for this week. So if you're thinking about putting that flex, I would reconsider.
Yeah. Okay. And another dud that you have for this week?
Another dud is, interestingly enough, not a huge dud. I think we have a lot of players making big bounce backs games. However, we will say that Scotty Miller is a player that we project to be a little bit of a disappointment. Yeah, very interesting enough. Beginning of the season, I don't think a whole lot of people knew who Scotty Miller was, but he's found the chemistry, he's found the situation, and he honestly is outperforming Chris Godwin with injuries and everything. But Scotty Miller has the hype right now, but I think for week 4 will be a slight disappointment. So you'll see, but a lot of data is trending towards, unfortunately, the opposite for him this weekend.
I agree with you there, and Chris Godwin could potentially come back. So, and then as one of my fantasy duds this week, I got the guy that's throwing him the ball, the GOAT, Tom Brady. I know last week, guys, he came back with a vengeance. He threw for 360 passing yards and 5 touchdowns after throwing a pick 6 early in the game. But and he did that with, as we mentioned, without Chris Godwin playing, but at the same time, he's going against a very vaunted Bears defense, which I am very familiar with here in Chicago. But and they're giving up the second fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. So I think Brady is just in for a down game. And even with Chris Godwin coming back potentially, I don't know, guys. I don't see Brady as having, maybe not having a worse performance, but not having the performance that you're used to expecting.
Yeah, for sure. I think Tom Brady is a wild card. Interestingly enough, we have him as a middle tier quarterback for this weekend because not much of an improvement there from his big performance. I think a lot of people will see the hot hand fallacy. Tom Brady had a big night, but we also have to see a disturbing trend. 2 pick sixes already, interception in every single game. O.J. Howard is down possibly for the season. Cameron Brate's not healthy. But Mike Evans is, has a hamstring injury he's fighting through. You got Scotty Miller,
Touched on every single game though. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been clutching it since after the first game. It was a dud. And then also you have just too many other questions on that offense. Gronkowski has been invisible thus far.
People hyped him up way too much in the offseason.
Exactly. A lot of people were drafting him in third, fourth round, despite just for the name. So
even in our league.
Yeah, I know. Someone surprisingly drafted Rob Gronkowski in the fourth round. So there's that, guys. So there's an interesting situation there.
Yeah.
So I think Brady can either go, find that receiver, because Ronald Jones another little X factor. He had a big night on the ground as well in the air. So I think it does start outweighing towards the negative. So I'll agree with you there. Yeah. For the Tom Brady being, a little bit of a bust this week.
Yeah. And then with my other dud, I have Zach Ertz, tight end for the Eagles. As we saw last weekend, I believe Sunday night, he had a very bad performance against the San Francisco 49ers defense that, while undermanned, is still pretty solid. And he didn't even manage to put up double-digit receiving yards. I'm not talking about catches, just plain old receiving yards. And he's playing against another great defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, while not having been exceptional against opposing tight ends, they still are really good. And I know Ertz is the focal point of the offense for Philadelphia at this point, but guys, I still don't think he'll put up the receptions, yardage, and touchdowns that you're used to seeing from him in previous years. And I think he'll have somewhat of a bounce back game from last week, but at the same time, it's gonna be tough sledding for him this week as well. Yeah,
I think it's just like Brady. It can go either way. Except this time, I think, with our numbers, is that we have Zach Ertz trending upwards. But a big part of it is just because of the terrible performance. Not just last game, but this season hasn't been that much of a, number 3 tight end that you expect behind that Kelsey and that Kittle. And then, the expectations are high, but we'll see him having a bounce back, but nothing too exciting. So, we'll half agree, I guess.
As always, this has been fun, Noah. So, as we usually conclude in every single video, Noah, can you give me your Week 5 Fantasy MVP?
Yeah, Week 5 Fantasy MVP. It's gonna be tough, but I think we also have to consider a fantasy MVP is also someone that will come in and change your fantasy game. So you want to look at your flex position, your running back, your tight end, your kicker. So from a fantasy perspective, you might be surprised by this choice, but I think that we saw the MVP for this week is going to be Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans.
Wow. Okay.
So from a fantasy perspective, he will have an outing that's going to be in for PPR leagues, the high 20s, even 30s. He's got a great matchup this weekend. It's going to be an offensive showdown for the Texans there. With Bill O'Brien fired, there's a lot of questions. But if you see a lot of times that Watson wants to feed the running back to David Johnson, to Darren Fells, and tight end position, he likes the short intermediate passes to march down the field. Not in the game manager sense, because he wants to set up a deep throw to Kati and Will Fuller. So a lot of deep threats there, Brandon Cooks. So Watson has not only the potential, but the trending data to break out, but be that MVP. He's going to beat out I think he's going to beat out most quarterbacks this weekend.
Okay. Again, another pick that's if you're not looking at stats, or maybe not stats, but like analytics or like machines or anything, like you think, Deshaun Watson, that's an interesting pick, but like you guys have been spot on, and trust Sport AI. I'm serious. They're really good. And for my pick, I'm going to go with a quarterback that right now, he was leading the MVP race, but right now maybe Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen has something to say about that. But Russell Wilson, the quarterback from the Seahawks, I think it's past time that we give the Richmond native Russell Wilson his due. He's been rather inconsistent as a fantasy quarterback the last couple of years, but he's been on fire to start the 2020 season, and he has at least 315 yards and 2 touchdowns in each of his past 4 games. And on the season, he has 1,285 passing yards, 16 passing touchdowns, and only 2 picks.
Oh my goodness. Crazy stats.
Music to one's ears to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of matchups, he has an awesome matchup this week against a Forest Vikings defense that's giving up at least 300 yards through the air to 3 out of the 4 quarterbacks they face. So if you combine his rushing ability, which is pretty good, with his fantastic passing ability, and the fact that the Seahawks, as we mentioned, I believe in last week's video or the week prior, have actually moved to a more pass-happy offense for the first time in what we believe to be his entire career, really. And the fact that he's playing against the Forest defense, I think he's in for a big fantasy outing this week and is my front runner for fantasy MVP for week 5.
Yeah, you definitely can't go wrong there. Russell Wilson's, trending, finally getting the credit it deserves as arguably top 3 quarterback in the league. So I would definitely agree with that pick there. I think Watson and Russell Wilson both are going to go off. So it'll be a good weekend for a lot of people.
Yeah, it should be another fun week of fantasy football, as it always is, really. But hopefully, the injuries slow down and we just, and COVID cases hopefully don't skyrocket or anything.
No deterrent to the season, right?
Got to worry about the Titans right now. I think the recent test that they got back, I believe yesterday or last night, came back negative for all their.
Oh, thankfully.
So hopefully that continues, and we just get football this weekend and just have some fun and get to watch the games. But yeah, this has been another great one, Noah. Thank you so much for joining the channel. And as I always talk about, as we always talk about, make sure to subscribe to alerts from Sport AI, as they post them pretty much every week and through an email notification pretty much. And I'll make sure, as always, to include that in the description so you guys can easily find it down below. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate it, as we try to post fire content as much as possible on here. And we also try to post fire content on our Instagram page, all lowercase DMVSportsZone, and our Twitter page at DMVSportsZone. And be on the lookout. By the end of tomorrow, you guys should see a new logo for the channel. And great.
I'm excited.
Great there. Excited there. And again, Noah, thank you so much.
No problem. Make sure to check out, the description for all the information you guys need, and excited to keep bringing great fantasy news and analytics to DMV.
For sure. Peace.